Hey everybody, welcome to the Marquez Says Show. I'm your host, Marquez Mosher, and this is my co-host, cohort, and eldest son, Austin Mosher. He and I always seem to bring out the feisty side of each other, and it leads to some very spirited conversations. There's never really any one topic. We see the world from many different perspectives, and sometimes we agree, and sometimes we don't. Either way, it gets very interesting, so sit back, relax, and have a bit of fun at our expense as we explore some of the most unexpected perspectives you'll ever hear about the world we live in. So, let's get started. Oh, see, you don't really get too much of that on. For those who are just listening, he was trying to do a little strut in and.
How you doing?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Marquez Says Show. I'm Marquez. This is my co-host right here.
Feliz Navidad.
Okay, this is going to be one of those ones. As you can tell, today it's a little off. It's a little different. It's a little changed. And it's going to be a smorgasbord of...
Is that a foreshadowing?
No. No. Here's a teaser. We're going to do best old franchises and... the chef will be part of one of them. But that's going to be another episode down the road, because today...
Did you understand that, El Jefe?
We're just doing random stuff, things that we kind of came across on the internet, just different ideas, subjects, sayings, and stuff. So, yeah. So let's get started. Here's the first one.
Cool.
Avoiding certain people to protect your emotional health is not weakness, it's wisdom.
Would you the whole thing?
That's it. Would you agree or disagree?
It's so much shorter than I thought.
No, because I'll give you my opinion. Because avoiding certain people to protect your emotional health is not weakness; it's wisdom. On the surface, I would agree with that. I mean, I do. I think that it's, if someone's negativity or pulling you down, that's somebody you don't want to be around.
Right.
But on the other hand, I guess I have a problem with kind of the wording and such, because avoiding certain people to protect your emotional health. I think there's also something to be said that, well, maybe you also need to evaluate your emotional health, because if it needs to be protected, I guess this is the saying, at what degree does it need to be protected? Does it need to be protected all the time? Do you have to be on the lookout? Are you expending extra energy? Because if that's the case, then maybe you need to work on the strength of your emotional health as opposed to worrying about how you're going to protect it all the time.
Well, you can strengthen your emotional health sometimes strengthening your emotional health requires cutting people off.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes people are only toxic. They're only there to take from you, whether they're conscious of it or not.
That's true.
So I think I would agree with that quote. I think that obviously you and yourself, you have the influence over your own emotions and how you feel and all that. But I don't know. I don't think that there's any sort of deeper level that we got to read into on that quote. I think the quote's just true.
Yeah, and I do see that, and that's part of this my whole thing, and the reason I have Vision Perspective Group, and the one thing that I like to look at is perspective. In fact, that's kind of what I call, when someone says, well, what do you have as a title or something? I just say I'm a perspective specialist, because I just want to see things, or I like seeing things from different angles, different points of view. And so when I read something like that, I just wonder sometimes about, well, it sounds so great on the surface, but dive a little deeper, look into it a little bit more, because I fear sometimes people will take it, mainly they'll take it and use it as a crutch or an excuse to be just like, oh, you know what, I'm cutting you out of my life, and not taking any responsibility, going, well, actually that person really wasn't that bad. It was more about how you were getting triggered or internalizing and things that you could be aware of that maybe you need to work on. Now, maybe not, but,
Yeah, definitely. I think people do that a lot, and we've touched on that in the past. It's hard. How do you know, though, in the moment, though? That's one of the harder things to do, is know, well, am I taking this the wrong way? Is this something I have to work on within myself? Or is this person actually, being toxic and bad? And I think it happens, like what you just said, I think it also happens in the reverse, too, though, because a lot of times somebody will be toxic to you, and then you'll be like, well, this is okay, because I bet that I'm only reacting negatively to this because of something within me.
Yeah, that's true.
And it can be flipped.
Yeah.
On both sides.
No, you make a good point. It's definitely, this is kind of the bigger picture of when we look at things about, something sounds good on the surface, but it comes back to that whole, is it just a meme? Is it just, what good is it if you see something and you get that, ooh, that makes me feel good, and then it's gone.
Right.
Like
is it fake?
5 minutes, it's gone, and you just, and so sometimes when I see stuff like that, it just makes me question and kind of wonder about, is it really something that I
Well, there are a lot of people out there that try to do fake deep quotes to get a bunch of retweets or likes or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. So I mean, if it's I guess again, it's as long as you know what if you're looking at a deeper level. That's just what it is. Okay, so here's another one, and this one actually is one of the ones that revolves around you are the average, or the 5 people that you hang out with, and so on and so forth. That saying about hang out with smart people.
Oh, okay,
You kind of are the average of the 5 people that you associate with. And
what if you only associate with yourself?
Then you're screwed, because there's no way you're going to get any new open perspectives, no extra awareness. You're pretty much going to be, talk about an echo chamber.
Oh, true. Your head's the worst echo chamber.
Yeah, you're going to just be around. So it's one of those things, though, because I don't have a lot of close friends, and I don't think I have nearly any new quote unquote close friends. So the 5 people that I sometimes, if you use that analogy, are the online people that I will follow or that I will pay attention to, things like that. Right. That's those 5 people for me, which is a little different because it's not necessarily 5 people that I hang out with, but the 5 people that I want to hear their opinions and stuff like that. I keep that cycling instead. But this one is actually a twist on it. It says, if you hang around 5 confident people, you will be the 6th. If you hang around 5 intelligent people, you will be the 6th. If you hang around 5 millionaires, you will be the 6th. If you hang around 5 idiots, you will be the 6th. Be smart. That was what the meme was.
I agree.
I
think it's not a given. Like, I hate the speaking in the absolute terms of like it's a given, because some of those things I don't think are true. Like the millionaire one, that's kind of a stretch. Like, just because you hang around millionaires doesn't mean anything. Like,
what about if you hang around 5 idiots, you'll be the 6th?
That's probably pretty true, because by association, it won't even matter if you're actually smart. We've seen this in my own personal life. I got kicked out of the dorms for hanging around idiots. I didn't do it.
That's true.
I wasn't being an idiot. I didn't actually do anything. But because of who I was associated with, I was actually the only one that ended up getting in trouble for it.
No, that's a good point.
I mean, I believe it, to be honest.
And that's one of those things where you have to see, again, something on here. You have to dive deeper. It's if you hang around 5 confident people, you'll be the 6th. Well, it's not that simple. It's not that easy.
No, yeah.
It's almost misleading to say that, hey, okay, go out to a networking club of like the Toastmasters.
Right.
And if you just start hanging out with people that speak publicly well, it doesn't mean that you're going to just become out,
right.
that you're going to become a good public speaker.
I think it's more so, I mean, obviously the surface level of it, you can't take these at surface level. You gotta, like what you're saying, look at them deeper. But at the same time, that doesn't mean the sentiment is wrong.
No, and that's exactly it, is that I just have my own problem with the fact that they simplify it so much that I don't know how helpful it is to those who aren't actually, I guess to the ones who may need it the most. I sometimes wonder whether or not it's really helping them or not.
Yeah, but are the ones that need it the most, are they going to read a whole thing? They might just need a little thing to see, and then be like, okay, cool, I got this little blurb, and then they go off and do their own thing, but they need something to dip their toes into the water and get used to the ideas at first.
But you right there, though, you assume that the person had the initiative to actually go and do further research and stuff.
They might if they see something like that and get inspired.
Yeah, so it's just, again, it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, it sounds great, but you didn't really give them anything to go on. I mean, as far as...
there's definitely nothing there. And that, again, though, that plays into what I'm talking about, the people who are basically exploiting these platforms to say this stuff. And if you were to... I mean, you've seen it, I've seen it, and then you ask them any questions, and they have no answers.
Yeah, and most of these people
You ain't got the answers, Sway. Go ahead.
Most of these they mean well, too. They're trying to actually... they're trying to help people, but... I don't know. I just have sometimes that issue of, really? Come on. Give them something else to go on. Like, that was all it was. It was a share. That was actually a share of that. And it's like, why not make a comment? Tell them that this is, go into a little bit of context about, hey, this is what you need to do. It's not that it's just going to happen by osmosis. You do need to actually put in the work. I mean, things like that. That's,
Yeah, how many millionaires do you know that you could just readily hang out
and that
with?
one, of course, is hard.
Right.
Although, unless you do it like I mentioned...
I'm going to pick on that one because that one's stupid.
But like I mentioned, though, online, You could follow millionaires. You could follow Warren Buffett. You could
totally
follow
can.
Mark
And you
Cuban.
can listen to
follow
them.
those people.
You totally can. I just, that one is so dumb to me. And then think about, it's just so dumb. And think about the people that we associate with from like nothing to millionaire or nothing to something. Let's use Jay-Z. He didn't associate with millionaires. He made himself a millionaire.
Yeah,
I don't think Warren Buffett was definitely poor when he started out.
Yeah.
He didn't associate with millionaires. That's not why he became a millionaire. It's like a crutch. It's like saying, oh, well, and it's kind of a given. It's like, oh, well, no shit. If you hang around millionaires, you're going to start investing and doing all the same things they do. You're just going to copy them. You didn't become a millionaire. You became a clone. Yeah. Like, I hate that one. That one's dumb. I agree with most of the other ones in there, but the millionaire thing, that's stupid.
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from, because, you know, even that one, you still, just because you hang around them, and even be a clone, you still have to do something. You have to watch what they do. You have to copy what they do. You know,
right.
And now you may go on your own and try it and become your own millionaire because they taught you the thinking behind it, the thought process behind it, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, here's another one that came up where it was a number one rule. I'm
so sorry. I got to go back to that other one. Okay. Another thing. Why is it assuming that to better yourself or to grow, you have to, you know, be around other people that are doing those things? I feel like it's taking the responsibility off of the singular individual to do those things or want those things for themselves.
Yep,
It's like placing the blame on something else.
If it doesn't happen, yeah.
Right.
I think it's a support thing. I think it's a
support thing too, but it's also not everybody needs that support.
That's true. I mean, you do look at it. It is one of those things where
if it's not coming from within you to start,
right,
those groups aren't going to matter.
That absolutely. The groups are there as a support function. The groups are there to be able to bounce ideas and hopefully kind of keep you on track. So I definitely agree with you with that part. Okay, so I'm going to clean up the language a little bit in this one, but number one rule, screw what they think. The world is going to judge you no matter what you do, so live your life the way you screwing want to. Now, I mean, on the surface, again, this is a great one on the surface about, absolutely, you know what, don't care what anyone else thinks, da-da-da-da-da-da. But I've covered this a couple times in different posts, different conversations I've had, that it's okay to want to be liked. Mm-hmm. But you just can't need to be liked.
Right.
And that falls into this one because, sure, go ahead and say, you know, I don't care what anybody thinks about me and stuff. Actually, you should care. You shouldn't make your decisions based on that. You shouldn't live your life based on that. But you absolutely should care what other people think. I mean, otherwise it's just being selfish.
And you have to be conscious because the way that people react to the things you do could potentially be a detriment to things you want to do in the future. So you need to be conscious of it. Not necessarily that you're compromising yourself, your values, or your actions, but you have to use it almost against the people that are going to be critical of you. And you have to, and we've talked about this.
Yeah.
Oh, this could have been a good topic. We'll save it for next week. Is manipulation. Is it good or bad?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I've totally forgot. It's something we've been wanting to talk about.
Yeah, we can write that one down.
Right. Okay, but anyway, manipulation is not always a bad thing. And you can use people assuming what somebody's negative perception is going to be and turn it on itself and use it first. And I think that's super important.
Yeah,
and it's especially kind of in the relation to that.
Yeah, I just in this person, I understand. I get it. I understand where they're coming from, and I understand what the point of it is.
As an artist, uncompromising is like my whole thing.
Yeah,
so
it's just that you have to. There is a time and place because it's just information. It's data points. When you take into consideration what other people are thinking, that actually makes you a stronger person, as opposed to using it as a crutch or an excuse to say, I don't care.
You don't back down from it. You figure out how to use it to fuel your own vision and your own motivations.
Right. You shouldn't let them, again, it's not to sway you and it's not to dictate anything, but it is there as information to bring into you so that you can make better decisions. It's about the awareness, kind of that awareness of, the awareness part of when I talk about think more, care more, live more, that again comes back to the awareness of think more, that self-awareness, that situational awareness. So, and it's interesting because a lot of these ones, when you get that, it's interesting because I notice a lot of the pictures are these glamorized like selfies. For men and women, both. Right. And you're like, well, wait a second, hold on. You went through a whole lot of trouble, and maybe it was to make you feel good. I got no problems with that. But more likely it was to grab attention. You wanted them to grab attention for them for you to tell them, I don't care what you think. I mean,
that's a little ironic.
It's kind of like, okay, that's okay, interesting.
That's true.
Enough. Go ahead.
It is ironic. I think another interesting, like, you know, avenue to take off of that is knowing a part of being a well-rounded person is knowing when to compromise and when not to compromise. There's some things that sometimes you need to recognize and be like, okay, this isn't worth my time. I'm not going to force this. So fine, we can meet somewhere in the middle or whatever. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you shouldn't. There are times when you know something and you're going to know it intrinsically within yourself, and you don't compromise, and it's worth the fight, and it's worth the pushing, and it's worth the saying that, well, screw you, I'm gonna live how I screwing want.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that is probably, to me, those are probably my biggest takeaways from that post.
Yeah, it's...
I agree with the sentiment. I love the sentiment. The artist part of me is wholeheartedly in that sentiment. But me outside of the music and the art and all that stuff there's more layers to it, and you gotta peel back the onion.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones that... when you're talking about when you think about how many times you come across somebody, the ones that say they don't care, they often care the most. Yeah, how do we perceive those people? Most of the time, those ones are the ones that are doing something wrong. They're doing something detrimental to themselves or to society. Right. And you're like, that's just an excuse. It's just to absolve yourself of responsibility.
It is. And I've had those conversations because I have friends, you know, like that. I mean, everybody does. Everybody knows people like that. And it's like a fine line because you can it's really hard to talk to people like that because what are you going to say? They're already aware of the things they're doing wrong. So if you call it out, they've probably already have their defenses all in their head. Yeah, it's a tough conversation to have. It's a very tough conversation to have. But you have to have it anyway because they're your friends, and that's just part of life.
And then this one came into it's kind of a little bit similar to the other one that we had, where it's best way to diffuse an intense situation: don't participate.
No,
I'm like.
Well, it depends. There's like so much missing from that.
Right. What do you mean by an intense situation? And you know, one that goes back to that negativity that you know that you're trying to protect yourself from, because just best way to diffuse an intense situation. Don't participate. That's just like that you could just might as well have said ignore it.
Right.
I mean, and that I don't see how that usually ends up being.
Because and then also it's basically saying that communication is no longer needed. There are 100% ways to diffuse an intense situation calmly in a a very de-escalating way. Yeah. You don't need to just ignore it. It's like saying oh, this person is saying incredibly hateful speech. Let's just ignore it instead of being like, oh hey, this is a public forum. You probably shouldn't say that. And the fact that you're thinking that, you should reconsider your beliefs. Or not even saying you should reconsider your beliefs, but how about this, and this? You don't have to tell somebody how to feel, but try to guide them to something instead of...
It's just, that one was, it's a really hard one to just say don't participate, because I just find that, yes, if you maybe you already know at the outset that this is just an argument that maybe it's not worth it. It comes back to, would you rather be happy or right? That True. One correct or happy. Yeah.
Another thing to disprove that is domestic abuse is a pretty intense situation most of the time.
Yeah, there's just so many
right, things what do you do? Like, if you're the person being abused, it would diffuse it if you did nothing, because eventually the steam's going to be gone, but you're also going to be battered. Or to a bystander, they see this. Like, oh, well, if I get involved, it's going to exasperate the issue. Well, it might, but what's the alternative? Yeah. I don't know.
It's really hard. That's where it comes back to what I kind of started this segment with, is that there's just such a simplicity to that makes it kind of like, I don't. And then I saw so many, and there was so many responses about absolutely 100% correct and all this stuff, and it's just like, okay, where is the thought behind this? And now a few people did comment like we did, like, well, wait a second, hold on, it depends on the situation and stuff like that. But that's why I don't feel these are nearly as beneficial as people think they are, because if you're just throwing it out there,
especially or not,
if you just throw it out there and you have no context to it, you don't even apply your own your own interpretation of it. Mm-hmm. That's just hard. That's just, I just think it's almost counterproductive.
Oh, I definitely think something like the other ones that we've looked at. Excuse me, sorry. The other ones that we've looked at, I haven't had as much of an issue with. That one though, whoever posted that, I want all the smoke. You can hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, but we can hash that one out.
Yep. And then one thing that goes through, it seems to be with a lot of these. Many of the people that seem to be like posting these things, talking about just different different perspectives on what's going on, their cases, whether or not, whether they're theories, conspiracy theories, or just facts or whatever.
Right.
But you have a lot of quote unquote enlightened people that are the ones that are actually perpetuating the biggest misleading of all, not of all time, but just the fact that they're misleading people so much, because and yet they're the ones that are actually considering themselves enlightened, and they're the ones that are actually, the ones that know better, and yet they're the ones that are throwing stuff out there that can be just shut down so quickly. There's that irony in that is just crazy.
There is, and it's because I don't want to say something too bad
about
people. Like, I'll try to delicately say, I feel like in this world, in this arena of self-help and self-betterment and all that stuff, there are a lot of people that are genuinely looking for help, but don't necessarily know where to get it.
Yeah.
So the thing that immediately says invalidates you, right, is the stuff that they're going to gravitate towards.
Yeah.
However, if you feel like you need the help, the immediate thing that you see that you connect with, is that necessarily the best thing that you think you need to be actually hearing right in that moment?
Yeah.
Or is that just, the sort of validation to make you kind of continue the things you're doing? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but some of those, that really surface level thing, if somebody wholeheartedly agreed with that right away and then was so passionate about it that they commented and said, oh, yeah, I agree with this, I would question. It's tough. I don't want to insult anybody,
right,
but
that's where I was coming back to. We talk about the echo chamber. You talk about the fact that is just reinforcing, which is why the simplicity of these things bugs me. It's why it bugs me, because you may be thinking you're empowering and you're inspiring, but what you really do is reinforcing some negative things more so than the powering. Because guess what? The people that are already, or that are going to take towards the empowerment, inspiring side of it, they don't need to see it. It's a nice reminder here and there, but I'm gonna bet that their personality, generally speaking, is one that doesn't necessarily need to be boosted and brought up. Whereas the ones who do, those like you just mentioned, they're going to take it in the way that they're going to take it, and that could be to a detriment, again, to them or to the situation. So you need to put some context in these things. You need to be able to say, hey, it's, the best way, if, a tense situation, ignore it or don't participate. It's kind of like, however, if that situation, or start it all to begin with and give it the context of, in situations where there's, in intense situations where it doesn't involve, hurting anyone behavior. Now, granted, does that sound as good? No.
Here's the thing, though. I just had to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
How much is the person posting that? Is that their responsibility? Or is it their audience's responsibility to then further look into it?
Communication's two ways. It's what you put out there and what you want it to be received as. I think sometimes communication, especially on social media, obviously, is such a selfish one-way thing. People are only trying, they're not communicating, actually. They're just shouting. They're just talking and shouting. They're just putting stuff out there. But yet they have it in this guise that they want interaction. They want engagement. And that's not the case.
Well, they want
really
engagement that agrees with them. Yeah. And actually, I don't even know if that's so much true. They want all engagement because people like to argue.
That's true. I mean, and
especially on the internet, because people aren't actually afraid of anything that happens on the internet.
So here's one that's kind of a pet peeve that goes with, we talk about communication. So when you read something, how important is the grammar and the spelling and so on and so forth to that meaning?
It depends on the context. If it's a serious thing, very important for me. But if it's not, if it's a joke or whatever, like a meme, I don't care at all. It's usually funnier if there's no grammar or punctuation in a meme. But if it's serious, I don't want to read anything that's not.
And you know what? Again, that's a nice little socially acceptable answer. But the problem with that is if the meme and stuff isn't done well, or it doesn't have proper grammar and correct stuff, the people looking at it.
No, this is a generational thing, because there are some things that are just funnier without
that almost sounds like it was done intentionally.
It is.
Okay, so that's different. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about when it's part of the meme and it's actually part of, the way it was structured.
The format or whatever.
I'm talking about someone who wants to tell them, hey, give me your money. Basically,
oh yeah, well that's what I'm saying is that's not okay. Like
right,
that's
but
not.
they'll do the memes. See, people that will actually want to be coaches or consultants or whatever you want to call them, they'll say basically it's because they don't have time for that. Like Gary Keller wears like the same thing. And
Which one is Gary Keller?
Gary Keller of Keller Williams Real Estate, the largest real estate
okay,
company.
yeah, okay.
He uses the fact that he doesn't use any uppercases, and I think he wears basically the same shirt. And a couple other people have done the same thing. Is because it saves time, so they can concentrate on their time on something else.
Yeah, okay. I've actually seen a lot of successful people do that.
Exactly, and there's nothing to say that's wrong about that, and I get that. But there's also something to be said that when it's talking about your outfits or not capitalizing and stuff, okay, that's fine. But when you read something that they wrote, it's not littered with grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes and stuff. It may not be capitalized because he did it on purpose.
Right.
I see so many people that are actually trying to be educated. They're trying to be at a certain level, and they're asking for you to admire them, or not even maybe admire them, but just to respect their knowledge.
Right.
And you see misspelled words, you see grammar mistakes, you see all these things, and I'm looking at it going, I have a hard time taking it seriously, and now,
I do too.
And texting and stuff, that's a different ball game. I get that. Even then, I used to basically always try to even do text grammatically and spelling. I'll even lack up on that a little bit.
Depends who I'm talking to.
Right. That's a good point too. But that's a big one about all these sayings and stuff like that. I just look at that and go, how am I supposed to take that seriously? How am I supposed to look at it and look and go, wow, this person knows what they're talking about?
That I totally agree with. That 100%, I'm on board with you. I don't even need to argue that one. I have nothing to argue on that one, unfortunately. Because I agree. If somebody is like asking for us to respect them, like it's certain positions that, and this is something I don't particularly, I'm always for challenging things, mixing things up, shaking the status quo. I love that. But there are certain things that shouldn't necessarily be shook up, or at least certain compartments of it shouldn't be. Like if you're the president of the United States, for example, there are certain things...
Should be able to spell?
Right. And there are certain responsibilities that you should have to do, period. They're just givens. There are certain things. In like spelling, articulating yourself well, all that stuff, those are givens. Now, and then people go, well, the sentiment behind it, did you understand what he was saying? Yes, but that's not the point. The point is, in a certain position, you have to be an effective enough communicator. You shouldn't have to guess. There shouldn't be guesswork. There shouldn't be no deciphering this. It should be clear cut and dry.
Yeah, and I think a big one is like if you have kids, nieces, nephews, or whatever the case is, if you see something, would you be okay with them reading it? And if you immediately say, oh yeah, that'd be fine because I know they'll be, they know better and stuff. Okay, that's part of the problem is because we end up with a downward spiral in society where we just keep getting more and more dumb because of the fact that...
Because we enable it.
And I was thinking about the whole STEM thing and STEAM thing that now. And so if you go with the STEAM thing, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Well, STEAM add the arts.
Oh, I thought you were only doing STEAM.
Both of them. Okay, so I thought about it, and the only thing that's really left out of that is English.
Right.
Which is just a given, because we know that. So what I find, but by the way, you could also do social studies, which could be considered history under the S, and engineering, you could use English, which is also, and arts, you could also use that as, there was another one for A. I was thinking, arithmetic. But the point I was saying is that we are now emphasizing STEM and STEAM. And now the original point was, of course, I think it was for girls, to get them interested for STEM, and then just get young people interested. And
it's to push people more into the engineering side of things again.
But that's kind of... But when we get to the point of STEAM, that's pretty much all of the curriculum.
Right.
So, what are we actually pushing?
Well, this was what happened, right? So they pushed STEM.
Well, no, I get that. I'm just going to concede that. I get what it is.
What I'm going to agree with you is I think it's dumb. And it wasn't a very... Well, I understand the idea behind it, but I don't think it was a very good idea in the first place. It was basically devaluing other subjects. And it wasn't amping up other subjects. It was devaluing the other ones.
Well, yes. And along those lines, I guess I'm agreeing with you on that, because now we got to the point where we're basically right back where we started.
Going back to where we used to be.
We're basically like, why are we not just teaching the fact that don't emphasize just the reading, writing, and arithmetic. I mean, you don't have to be, but emphasize all these other things equally. So, but that was just another one of those ones where I was kind of like, the intention was well, but it didn't really get pulled off.
No.
Another one was talk about is people, whether or not how honest they are with themselves, and are they truly honest with themselves, because these memes about the inspiring and stuff.
Yeah.
Does it come back, like you said, to why am I so excited about it? Why does this inspire me? Why does it motivate me? And then it kind of like, well, why is this doing that? Maybe I need to look a little deeper and go, okay, that was good. I needed it because I needed the reminder and I needed to keep going. But if it's triggering you to be like, yes, rah, 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 and all this stuff, then there's something deeper, because again, hopefully a meme isn't going to just trigger that alone.
Right.
You already are inclined to it. One of them had to do with the fact that being honest with themselves. Was it really being honest with themselves?
Right. And on that subject, a lot of people see something, they immediately recognize it as, oh, this is something socially acceptable. This is widely socially acceptable. People agree with this. People like this. I want to associate with that idea. So then they jump on the bandwagon right away, comment something big, I support this, blah, 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 blah. And then they think that post then becomes a reflection of them. So everybody online that saw it and saw their comment goes, oh, that's what that person's about.
That's true. That's kind of like the hashtag thing.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's another one. When I look at posts and all the inspirational, and it's got all these hashtags, I don't know. I kind of lose interest. I really do. I'm not looking at the hashtags. I mean, and I know that's a thing that's like some people do. And
I don't either. I should. It would help me.
And sometimes when you start looking at some of the ones where people made up, which I've done too, but hashtag, this is something I'm going to say right now, but nobody's actually ever going to click on anything else like it. I mean, okay, really? You see, that was almost just like an easy, okay, that's just the acceptable, cool thing to do. I hashtagged and made my comment. Why not just make your comment? Nobody's actually going to comment and type that hashtag into anything else.
Well, the hope is that somebody will. And this is why. Because people do it either ironically.
Yeah.
Or
they're trying to be cute.
There's three reasons. People do it ironically. Like, actually ironically.
Yeah.
People do it trying to look ironic when they're actually being serious, but they don't want to admit it. And then people who are being totally serious and will admit they're being serious in the hopes of it catching on.
Well, and those ones actually make sense. Because I even have my own. I do my own, like my hashtags on a lot of the posts I do. I do the think more, care more, live more, or think care,
that's
live
a good
mindset.
One.
I do those. I do those.
It represents your brand,
right? And it's also just saying, hey, if you got something that goes along with that, go with it,
right?
But like I said, when I see someone that says, hashtag having the worst day, gonna have a egg omelet. What? I mean,
it's just like, supposed to be a funny thing.
Yeah, because nowadays you say hashtag as opposed to oh my god, I'm having such a bad day.
There's a different ring to it, and it's like the whole thing of adding LOL at the end of a bare text now, so it doesn't come off as aggressive or anything. It's trying to make light of something, and letting everybody else know I'm making light of this. It's a social cue.
I use emojis a lot for that very reason, because I like to write and I like to actually communicate that way, and I in order to do that, though, in order to do it well, you've got to be able to know who your audience is, because sometimes you can't, and if I can't use them, then I have to make sure that I'm using the right words. But I love using emojis because, I mean, literally in my mind, a smiley face versus a big grinning face versus the winky face versus the...
I mean... He'll respond to my sentences with a soul emoji, and I'll be like, okay, cool, nice conversation. I was just like...
Well, part of it is kind of like, I don't have anything to add.
I know, I could tell, too. I can totally tell when he's like, I literally want nothing to do with this conversation. Here's a smiley face.
And a lot of times, it would be the same thing if we were talking. I just give you that look, and just blink my eyes, kind of like, okay.
I know, it's disrespectful. And you know what's worse?
It is not disrespectful. You know what's worse? I'm acknowledging you at least.
You know what's worse is he's not even the only one that does that. There are other people that have very little relationship with him that'll literally just blink at me. It's like, okay, cool. Screw me, right? Like to do the censored version.
Maybe you're trying to engage in conversations with people.
I will never be silenced. I will always express what is going on. Period.
Yeah, it's
trust me, it's not for you. It's for me. Yeah, exactly. It's like.
So that was just some of those things that we see every day, and I think you said a good point about become socially acceptable. We have to be very careful about how we take all these memes, and although I think it's not nearly as big of a deal as it used to be, but the simplicity that people bring to whatever their communication is. In some cases, I believe simplicity is absolutely the key. But in other cases, we have to have more critical thinking and more context, because if you don't, it's just words. It's just air. It's not even, you know, it may not even be worth saying anything.
Totally.
I mean, that's a big one. Yeah, that was. Here's one that was actually one that I didn't necessarily coin it, because other people did or said it as well. But fair is not always equal.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, but
we used to talk about that all the time as a kid.
I thought that was kind of one of the ones where I thought, okay, fair is not always equal. You know, and people will say, because one of the areas is when you come talk about equal rights, like civil rights and equal rights for all and stuff, and you go, yes, equal rights for all. Absolutely, there's a baseline that everybody should have, and we should be all equal and considered equal, especially when it's something that we can't choose. You know, color of your skin, sexual orientation, you know, things like that, where you get prejudice on. It's like you didn't even choose them.
Right.
I mean, it's just
everybody should be, you know, equal.
Yeah. So those equal, but
no matter what.
But when they talk about equality, and then people start talking about, like one example would be the minimum wage being a living wage. You know, and that argument can go back and forth. Not that I want to get into that argument right now, but because it's just too diverse with California. You know, you can get that. It just depends on the economic situations. But
this is why we should have local governments, which we do, and why should we have states and all that stuff. It should be monitored more so on a state-by-state basis. Right. Even county by county sometimes. Okay,
go ahead. What part of this discussion that I wasn't going to have right now?
But it's just, that's a good discussion. Okay,
but go ahead. It is a good discussion, but not the one that we're having right now.
All right.
But the point being is that equal is not always fair, because, you know, when people say, well, that's not fair, and it doesn't necessarily mean it. You don't necessarily fair to you. I mean, there's a difference between being equal, being fair, being equitable. I mean, a lot of times I think equitable is the proper term, because if you do something like a group project, you know, it's, you know, one person may do more than the other person. So in theory, they put in more equity to it. They should probably get, you know, more credit. But is it fair? Yes, that is fair. But that's not the case. We always talk about equal equals fair, or, you know, equals isn't always fair.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of conflation between the terms. But there are some occasions where something can be equal, but it won't be fair, and something should be. Like, hair is a good example. Like, in the workplace. It's well documented. There are a lot of businesses that won't hire people based off of their hairstyles, whether it be colored or, when I say colored, I mean artificially colored hair, or even like dreadlocks and stuff like that, which is associated with a certain community and culture. And by not hiring those people, that is unfair. It's like, technically, yes, legality, all that stuff says it's equal, but that is an unfair thing that should not be unfair, because it's just hair. It doesn't impact your ability to do a certain job.
You know, and I remember seeing the one with the ladders, where there's a wall and you have 3 different size ladders and 3 different size people. And fair or equal would be the fact that the wall, that's equal across. Yeah. But fair is the fact that the short person needs to get on the tallest ladder so they can see over the wall. But if you looked at it, you say, well, all those ladders aren't equal. They can't be equal if you want to actually achieve that fairness, because it has to. And that one's actually a really good one, because some people will argue that no, everybody should have the same ladder. And it's kind of like that's not fair, even though it's equal. Because if you start talking about going down that road of, well, then what are you talking about? What is fair? What is equal? Everybody should have this. And it's like, no, not everybody. Like tax cuts is a good one. It's like, you know, that doesn't, you know, everybody should pay their fair share.
Right. But
you know, what is that?
There are people that exploit that. That's why this particular, like, if you had asked me this 10 years ago, I would have been on a very different boat. But just seeing what I've seen now and 10 years later, there are too many people that'll exploit the whole equal versus fair thing. And that's why this conversation is making me a little uneasy. Because, like, there are people that use the whole equal versus fair thing to push an agenda that I'm not on board with. And I know you're not doing that.
Yeah,
but,
not
at
was
all.
Just literally bringing up the phrase.
I know, but there are people that use that phrase for dangerous concepts.
Because and sometimes it is very difficult when you talk about like access to healthcare. That kind of one.
And a lot of things are very systemic too. So they'll be like, oh well, we made everything equal. How do you want us to make it fair? Well, it's like, things have been a certain way and been ingrained for hundreds of years.
Are you talking about literally? Sorry to interrupt that.
Go ahead.
But are you talking about the fact that we've removed all of the restrictions for voting? Oh, really? You've given one polling place for a neighborhood of hundreds of thousands of people, and you made it in where they don't necessarily have their own personal transportation and have to make mass transit. Sure, you said you made it equal. Everybody has an equal opportunity, but then you put in all of these things that made it unfair.
Right, and that's not, and that is kind of what I'm talking about. Is okay. I do agree that there's conflation between the terms, but a lot of people conflate them to do really bad things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what scares me about that phrase, and why I'm almost moving away from that phrase a little bit, because it's like there's just almost, by being associated with that phrase, you're associated with negative concepts, and it's not something that I want to be associated with anymore.
No, I agree, and that was why it was just another one of those postings where I've seen it, and I've had my own conversations about it, where it says equal is not always fair, and sometimes it's it's the simplicity of it that you do have to add some context to it, but that one is there to make you think. Like some of those other ones that we talked about earlier in the show, they didn't make you think; they just made you react.
And that's on purpose.
Right, but some of them were actually meant though that they needed to be thought about. They needed some thinking to go into it. They couldn't just reactions, and that kind of sums up why we're doing this whole episode, was that when you post something or when you say something, even in face to face and such, what is the point of it? What are you trying to accomplish? And when you do communicate, are you communicating to just get a reaction? Are you communicating to have someone think about something? And when we get online, where it's a lot harder to provide context, we really need to be able to apply a little bit more of that critical thinking.
Totally.
That goes into it. So
100% agree. That's a good place to wrap it up.
I think it is. So, all right. Well, as usual, think more, care more, live more, and remember, you can change your life. We can change the world one decision at a time. Anything else, Austin?
Nothing today.
We will talk to you. We will talk with you.
We will talk at you.
We'll do all three.
We won't talk at you. You can talk at us, though. We like to hear it.
This is true. So don't forget to subscribe and check out all the other past episodes, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks.